I make a lot of videos about authenticity, and I wanted to share some information on authenticity so that you can get a better idea of what this is, how to be more authentic, and essentially what direction to kind of go in your own personal life so you can actually be more authentic. And I want a lot of you guys to listen closely because I often get a lot of messages, a lot of comments on my videos that really fundamentally misunderstand authenticity. So naturally, I kind of want to just help out, correct some of the ideas, and give you guys some direction to go in and, just some things to kind of notice. So I want to start this off by saying that a lot of things that we think are authentic in our lives are not authentic. We actually take this for granted. See, we have our whole life experience, our emotional wounds, emotional tendencies, patterns of relationship, all these things that have shaped us up until this point right now. And we kind of just often confuse a lot of behaviors and things that we're doing for just who we authentically are. When in actuality, a lot of things we actually do are coming from conditioning that isn't really genuine to us. It's something that we've just kind of picked up from the outside, and emotional wounds. And this is very hard to actually pick apart when you don't practice meditation, when you don't do any kind of healing work, some breath work, you don't spend some time in nature to just unplug from the noise of modern day life. It's hard to detect this when you're always distracted on your phone, eating junk food, things like this. It's hard to detect when you're also just always depressed or always anxious, always in survival mode, things like this. It's hard to detect when you don't read books on this kind of stuff as well. You don't, read the books on my book list, right? There's a reason why I put that book list out for free. It's because it's highly valuable. So in essence, a lot of the things that we do are not authentic, and we confuse them for being authentic. Right? So to actually be authentic requires a deep investigation of your own internal world in a very sincere way, aka a very honest way, a way that points you towards just seeing it clearly for what it is. And your mind has to be ready to accept some pretty brutal things. I gotta just break it to you. There's gonna be a lot of shadow work that you're gonna have to do because you're going through emotional wounds, old patterns of relationship, emotional tendencies, psychological tendencies, things like this. So to actually be authentic requires that you do some basic healing, basic to advanced healing work on your own mind, your body, your emotions, your soul, etc. All this stuff kind of being very interconnected. You got to raise your consciousness, essentially. Speaking of raising consciousness, authenticity becomes online. It comes online, really, at the self-actualization and self-transcendence levels of consciousness. And for those of you who are familiar with spiral dynamics, this is more so spiral dynamics stage yellow and turquoise, because below that, below self-actualization, you're more so in survival mode. You're always kind of scrambling to get some kind of need met. So without any self-actualization work, it's impossible to actually be authentic. You aren't really coming from a whole place within yourself. You're coming from fragmentation, disassociation. You're coming from a lot of wounding, actually. You're coming from just, I need to get what I need to survive and screw everything else, right? And even though your mind doesn't say it like that, doesn't phrase it in such a brutal way, this is kind of like the underlying conditioning that's actually driving you. And funny enough, when you're really being authentic, it's not that you throw your survival needs away. In fact, it's that you're able to fully embody them deeper and you're able to get them met in a much healthier way. So to actually be authentic requires that you actually do self-actualization. It requires that you actually begin to even notice the very conditionings that make up your sense of self, your sense of reality, and to allow them to kind of deconstruct. Because a lot of that is wounds and things like this, ways of guarding yourself against other. Because our sense of self emerges in response to pain, the fear of impermanence, the fear of death, things like this that we intuit from a young age. At around the age of 2, that's when our ego begins to come online. And without doing what I just mentioned, self-actualization and then self-transcendence work, without doing that kind of stuff, you're unfortunately going to be remaining stuck in a lot of subconscious patterns that are going to be controlling you, and you're not really even going to recognize it. In fact, you're going to just assume that this is who I am, this is me, this is, I'm just authentic. This anger that I have, this passive aggression that I have is just authentic when it's actually not. You're just going to assume this is life, this is the world, this is just how it is. My cynicism is just how I am, when in actuality, most likely it comes from a wound. My hatred for the world comes from a wound. My lack of love for reality comes from a wound. The wound of separation, the wound of being an ego, various kinds of emotional woundings that, happen. Life is difficult. Life is also easy. A bit of a paradox there. Hopefully you got a mind that can embrace both of them. But in essence, to be authentic requires that you actually deeply investigate your own mind. Again, inner work. It requires shadow work. It requires self-actualization, self-transcendence work. It requires that you actually be deeply sincere, because authenticity is an honest expression of who you are. And if you're being honest, it's hard to actually be honest. And what I mean here by honesty isn't like that sort of corny, like just be honest, tell the truth kind of thing, and then you end up lying because, who cares about honesty? What I'm talking about here is being sincere, right? Really, really connecting to your own heart, right? And even just being able to call out your own lies, your own denial, projection, blaming, avoidance, reactivity. You got to get clear about all your shadow. You got to get clear about this, which is honest. You're looking at things for how they are. You're looking at things for how they are truthfully. Right? You're looking at the mechanics of your internal world openly, right? And then you're trying to get what's true, because authenticity implies truth. So if you're not honest with yourself, you will not actually be authentic. If you're dishonest to other people as well, you're actually not going to be authentic as well. That should kind of just, I hope, hopefully be obvious to a lot of you. If you're blatantly dishonest and manipulative and exploitative, this is deeply inauthentic, and it's purely coming from wounds, trauma, low levels of consciousness, which is not authentic at all. It feels like shit. You're in what the Buddhists call samsara. Deeply in samsara, deeply in hell, essentially, deeply in suffering. And to be authentic, it's going to require courage, right? People in the past and even today in some countries get killed for being authentic. Jesus Christ being a very good example, right? What did he do? He, stood up against the church. He advocated for direct spiritual experience. He, in many cases, just went against the sort of traditional status quo. He was sort of very liberal in the sense that he would challenge authority, right? They killed him for that. And being authentic doesn't mean that you have to be standoffish or always challenge authority or anything like that. It's more about recognizing your own core values, your own being, your own sort of natural makeup as a human being, recognizing your own intrinsic guidance system, getting in touch with your own body, learning to get your own needs met. Things like this. Genuine self-actualization work. Check out my book list. Check out the book Toward a Psychology of Being by Abraham Maslow. Points this stuff out perfectly. Self-actualized beings often resist societal structures because they don't fit well with the person. They don't fit well with their authentic self. They don't fit well with what's healthy to them. It says a lot about society. And it also says a lot about how difficult it can actually be to be authentic. So a lot of people will think that authenticity is like, I'm angry, therefore like I react and I get mad. Often you'll notice that when you're the most authentic, you're going to be the least reactive. This doesn't mean that you can't express anger and use it as a way to set a boundary, because anger is a useful emotion. What this actually means is that, let's say you're angry at someone. You're not just going to blame them, project onto them, react towards them, attack them, things like violate them in any kind of way. That's all going to be very inauthentic. You're going to recognize that that's deeply inauthentic. But you can use your anger to set a boundary, to actually protect yourself in necessary moments. Right? It's very sort of paradoxical in a lot of cases. Right? You need a mind that can really embrace paradox, because being authentic is going to mean that you can defend yourself. You can set boundaries when you have to know yourself, protect yourself, and enjoy yourself. Right? That requires that you actually set boundaries. But you got to recognize that the self, who you are, isn't something to just be rigidly defended all the time. It's also something that can grow and expand. Your very sense of who you are, what is included in your very sense of who and what you are, your ego, this can grow and expand. Like humans had to develop over a long time to get to the point where we can care about the environment. Our sense of self expanded to include that. There's people who aren't at that level of consciousness yet, right? Very, very young children often they're kind of narcissistic in the sense that they're very focused on themselves, getting their own needs met, things like this. There's a development to mankind and its consciousness, right? Look at spiral dynamics, right? If a young kid doesn't get what they want on Christmas, they are acting like little dictators. Give me what I want now, crying, screaming. They want to hit something, right? So there's a sort of development to human consciousness, and the higher your consciousness, the more authentic you're actually going to feel. The more whole you are on the inside, the better you're going to feel. The more you're going to feel authentic, the more your internal parts all work in harmony, the more authentic you're going to feel. So just being reactive isn't actually very authentic. You're going to find that when you feel present, when you feel compassionate, when you feel open, when you feel a sense of timelessness, when you feel that time is not scarce, when you're attuned to the other, when you're able to let your guard down and get out of survival mode, you're going to feel very authentic. When you're able to be vulnerable in a safe environment, you're going to feel very authentic. When you're able to set a boundary because the environment isn't safe, or someone is doing something, you just got to set a boundary. Right? Maybe they're not horrible, wicked people. Maybe they're just doing something and you got to just let them know, like, hey, like I don't want that. Right? You're going to notice that's authentic. Your no is very authentic. Your yes is very authentic, right? In certain contexts. And it's up to you to attune to those situations carefully, which is why I really advocate for people practicing meditation, mindfulness, doing meditation retreats, highly transformative, and learning what your needs are. Write down what you need to be well as a human being. Do you need to feel productive? Do you need to feel connected to people? What kind of food do you need in order to feel the absolute best? Experiment with that one. Right? Do you need nature? Do you need to self-actualize? Do you need to read? Bit of a personal example for me, right? To feel the absolute best and maintain my well-being, I have to eat, let's say, wild blueberries. Love wild blueberries. They make me feel amazing. Lots of fruits and vegetables. I need to meditate. I need to read some books, right? I like working on, the books I'm reading, writing down a lot of notes, deep studying, deep contemplation. I need to do meditation retreats. I need to focus on the book I'm writing. I like to do coaching. I like to love making YouTube videos. So it's like, just identify the things that you actually need to actually maintain your well-being. You're a human being who needs to be maintained. I need to brush my teeth. I need to exercise, right? I need to stretch my body. You'll notice that health, authenticity, consciousness, truth, and love all actually go together. You'll find that if you're acting out of psychological wound, you don't feel very authentic. And it's really hard for a lot of people to actually notice this because we're so numb in our modern world. We're so disconnected from our bodies. We're so disconnected from our own internal guidance system. The food we eat is disgusting. Junk food's disgusting. We're always on social media, scrolling, brain rot. We don't even like to learn a lot of perspectives. There's just a deep lack of emotional intelligence. And there's all sorts of stuff. So to actually be alive and present, to actually be attuned to life, connected to life, this is, in a lot of cases, very rare and often requires some emotional labor, some time, some attention, some genuine effort to actually get those results. Right? It often requires you to go through a lot of conditioning that you were programmed with and deconstruct it. Often, progress is not adding more. It's actually subtracting what doesn't work. And then figuring out what does work. And also remaining flexible. That's it for this video. If you have any questions about authenticity, you can let me know in the comment section below. I'll do my best at answering a lot of the comments. I used to answer a lot of them, but now I'm finding that it's a bit draining on my energy. And I'm kind of just, slacking on that. Maybe I'll get back to it. Who knows? If you want to work with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.